Hello and welcome to Playmaker TV episode 10. I really can't believe it's already been 10 episodes, but it is. And this time we are going to talk about teams and stats around whole teams in the big 5 leagues. Jesper, you shared this presentation with me earlier this afternoon, and I'm quite excited about this episode because I think we will be able to show the ones that watch very very interesting things about their own teams and teams they support. We're going to start by I want to start by asking you something, because I saw something today that the Athletics one of their reporters for the women's game had written about Alex Greenwood, the center back in Manchester City.
Yes.
Because the article was about that she had ordered data to just use when she negotiated her extension with the club. And this is not that uncommon, right? Because you have experience from this as well, right?
Yes, I have. I think it's. I'm always very glad when I read those news, because I think it's a perfect way of using data to raise your salary or reach the club you want. And I have experience from Playmaker when we have used data to help players to make that move abroad from Sweden, for example, joining a bigger league. It could be visualizing the stats in a player report, or comparing the team performance, like when the player plays with the team or is not playing with the team, how much impact the player makes, as well as comparing the player to other top players in Europe, or like their qualities and so on. So yeah, it's loads of fun to do, and a service that Playmaker offers.
Yeah, and also you and I did, I think it was ahead of the Euros, we actually compared Magdalena Eriksson's stats from 2 seasons. And then, because that was very interesting, because we could see that because she had been away injured for 3 months, then we could see who took on her role sort of in the team when she was away, and also what she is contributing with to Chelsea. So you can, but I know that you always talk about the fact, when especially in the conversation with agents, that it can't not just be about great numbers and stats. You have to know how to use them in order to present players in the best possible way. And also because this is where this episode comes in, because we are going to talk about the style of play that teams come out and play with, and does it really fit a single player in different ways. So you just can't show the good numbers. But we will also say that Playmaker is offering this service to media outlets as well as agents and so on. So get in touch if you're interested in looking at what Playmaker can do for you.
Yes, and I can say that you could reach out to me, on Twitter, or my email, and it's also like we've done different customized services, but also like very soon we will have a web page where it will be very easy to automate buy player reports, and we cover around the 10 different leagues in women's games, so it's very easy to get your hands on player reports for women's soccer or football.
Yeah. And we must also add now, because we are going to talk about the big 5 leagues in Europe, but we have a problem with the Spanish league, because that's games are missing, because it's hard to get stats and data from that league. So we will only show the data of Real Madrid and Barcelona in this episode. We're I'm going to say it right now. And I'm going to give you the reason, because that is the reason, unfortunately.
Yeah, we don't have all the games of all teams, so I thought it was unfair to show some other visualizations. But hopefully this is the last season that's the case, or that's the goal at least. So should we just dig into the presentation then, maybe?
Yes, let's go.
So I put us on the side here, and I changed the slides. So this is going to be a team special. It's going to be a bit similar to last episode when we talked about the top performing players in the big 5 leagues. But now we're going to look into the teams. So we're going to look into style of play and performance, and hopefully you will see some differences in between the teams in how they play and what they are good at. So we start off with some goal maps, and this is just this is a regular shot map, but instead, since it's a team, I just chose to visualize the goals scored by the teams in red here, so you don't have any missed shots or shots off target in this plots here. And that
some overperforming here, we can see that.
And it's I would say it's normal that top teams they rather overperform than underperform because they have good finishers. But you can see here from Manchester City, for example, that they should have scored more goals than they have done so far. Almost 4 goals missing, as compared to United, that has been super effective.
I was going to say that because I do feel that the one of the spots for the Champions League next season and top 3 in the WSL, it will be all about the 2 Manchester teams. I'm not saying that either one of them could not end up better than 3rd, because I really do think that Manchester United could. Also, obviously, Manchester City, but since Manchester United haven't finished top 3 yet, this is great numbers for them. Let's see if they can keep it for the rest of the season.
And we can say also like the size of the dots here is the expected goal for the given shot, and like usually like the circle is like bigger the closer to goal you come, but that it doesn't necessarily need to be like exactly in that way, or at least not linear, because our expected goals model also considers like what kind of situation it is. Is it a player coming in a free situation, or is it a header in a packed area or something? So you can see here, for example, United has a pretty high expected goals far out, and probably this is like a player in open space, only the goalkeeper in front, and like more likely to score.
And I do think that Manchester United, out of these 4 teams, Manchester United have a lot of different goal scorers. They have the most different goal scorers.
Because for Manchester City, we can mention, we talked about Khadija Shaw last episode, and she has very good numbers when it comes to converting expected goals. But as a team, they are, so even though she's doing a great job, as a team, they're underperforming.
So would you think that if Bunny Shaw didn't play for Manchester City, if they perhaps put her on the bench to rest her, that would show?
Yeah, for sure. If she would have gotten injured, they maybe would have bought another player that could have done a good job, or the player behind could have done. But I mean, Khadija Shaw is a top-class player. To me, she's one of the best strikers in the world. So since she's overperforming this year, she's been good before, I would definitely say it would show.
Let me ask you one more thing, because this is interesting about the XG metric. That's probably the most common used metric in football. But we can see here that I'm just going to say this with my hobby eyes now, because we can see that Chelsea is the team that are the closest to their XG, versus goal scored. And then we have Manchester United that is they have the highest differences between goals scored and their XG.
Yeah.
What does that say? Like, can it say something more than that? Like goals scored and they are overperforming, underperforming, should do better.
Yeah, I think you need to like maybe dig closer into the numbers to find the best answers. But of course, you can look at this and say that United is overperforming. And when you're overperforming, I could say that it could be different things. It could be that you have been partially lucky, or like that you've been efficient with your finishing from the start, and that the number will go down. Or when we look at the end of the season, they will be more close together, and maybe United will have a tougher spring. But since like good players are usually always like top class player like Sam Kerr or Khadija Shaw, they are usually like overperforming for several seasons. If you have players like that, you will overperform as a team as well. Or if you have several players, and that could sometimes be hard to tell. And also, since expected goals is a statistical model, it's like it's trained on historical data, loads of games. And a model becomes better the more data you have. So if you're just looking at a group stage in the Euros from the summer, for example, there's more room for coincidence since the model is matching a few shots. So you could have like players that have taken care of the chances. But if you're looking at an entire season, when the season is over, and maybe you combine it with the Champions League, for example, then you can say with more accuracy that this team is good at finishing, or this team, is overperforming or underperforming.
So this is England, and it's the top four in the correct order as well as the table stands.
And now this is only the shot, so you have to look at the other maps. But when you look at this, you can also see maybe a pattern that some teams really wants to shoot close to the goal or in the box, as other teams go for shots outside the box more. You can see that Arsenal has 3 goals outside the penalty area. City has 4. United has 1. So like you could see a pattern of like style of play or where they want to shoot. Also, so keep that in mind. So if we move to France, for example, we have a different story, and we can see Paris. I also placed these in the order of, I've taken the top 4 teams in every league. So if you don't know the table, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4. So PSG is leading and Lyon is second. And here you can see that for example, Lyon, they are also underperforming a lot, and they're not. If you look at performance metrics that we'll do later with some scatter plots and spiders, you can see that Lyon is performing very well. But when it comes to finishing, they've underperformed a lot. And probably if they would have taken care of their chances more according to the model, or more normally, they would have been leading the league, but they are not.
I think they miss a certain Norwegian superstar player. I'm not sure, but
could be. PSG is according to model, very normal style of play. Montpellier is pretty efficient. Maybe they will drop down. If it's pretty even between Montpellier, Football Club Fleury, and Paris FC. They're behind, so could be some switch of play. And you can see Lyon also has like a lot of goals in the golden area, just outside the goal area here. Like they are very centralized. As for Montpellier, that they don't come to finishes in that area as often. They're more like further out in the penalty area.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to see, because if you only look at numbers like this, you could easily tell that here the third and the fourth team in the French league, they are overperforming.
Yeah.
Compared, but the 2 teams actually in the top, they are quite. Obviously Lyon is really underperforming if you just look at these numbers, and PSG, okay, it's similar to Chelsea actually, PSG.
Yeah, exactly. It is, and like now they've played 10 games or more, so now it's they have several different goalkeepers. But if you look at, for example, national tournament, they used a few games. Like the underperforming could also be a fact from that. In Sweden's game against Belgium in the quarterfinal, for example, we played a very, very good goalkeeper, and that kept the numbers down. And then maybe it's not the finishers that have done a bad job. It could be the goalkeeper in the opposite team that had a fantastic day, or is just class.
Exactly.
If we go to Germany, I think it's interesting that Wolfsburg has only scored goals here in the penalty area. They're very good at reaching the goal area, and they are overperforming as well. And here the story is that all the teams are overperforming, and Freiburg is overperforming by a lot. And I think that's because they have several goals from outside the penalty area. Like they have some goals that are almost in the central third, and that's like it's rather unlikely. But also, if you have good finishers, why not? But it could mean that they will like. For the rest of the season, their numbers will go down.
Because goals scored from that far outside the penalty area, it's going to be interesting to see if they can keep that up.
Yeah, I mean, like outside here, it's like it depends on the situation and if it's a free kick or it's in play. But like outside here, it's from like if below here it's below 1%, or up here it could be like 4%. Depends if it's a free kick, but it's a you have to shoot many times on normal to score from those areas. If we go to Serie A, we have.
But here you have the same sort of pattern in the numbers that you had in France with the first, top of the table team. You have Roma, who is. Yeah, it's looking quite similar between goal scored and XG, such as PSG and Chelsea. But then there are differences, you could say, especially Inter.
Yeah, especially Inter, yeah, exactly. And Inter, we talked about Chawinga last episode. And she's one of the most efficient strikers in Europe right now.
She is scoring goals, you can say that.
Yeah, and we don't have Kosovare Asllani's Milan because they're not in the top 4 right now. So
no,
I don't have them here. But we had we have a Swede that signed with Fiorentina recently, so maybe we will see her in this chart.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you know, but Roma played Fiorentina, I think, this weekend.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure 7-1. They won.
Yeah, Roma are good.
So yeah, and then you have to remember that this is the first place in Serie A, the club, and then the 4th. So and then 7-1. That's big numbers.
Really big numbers. Really big numbers. So here we have Spain, and we have the two giants, Barcelona and Real Madrid. Both are overperforming, and
that's a sick XG. Like Barcelona,
it's crazy. I should maybe have had these. I could have had these slides per game. If sometimes when you just have the number, it could be hard to like realize like how many games have they played, but still like they produce so many chances. They're probably the best offensive team in Europe, and will be interesting when we look closer to Champions League to compare the numbers and see if they produce the same.
Yeah, because these teams play in the same league. Then you have Real Madrid with the XG of 16.73, and you have FC Barcelona XG 42.91.
Yeah.
I'm not sure we will have to talk about this further, but
no, we can mention that.
Sick.
Now we change slides. So we have looked at Team Spiders previously in Playmaker, but I think maybe it was a while ago. Like we did it in some of the starting episode, compared Arsenal to Chelsea. Otherwise, we've been looking a lot at like the player Spiders, and what I want to say, like before we start with these, is that necessarily like a player spider, like a completely red or a large spider, isn't necessarily making the team a better team. But like if you are performing in the top in the different stats, it's more likely that you are good. But you could have other like styles of play that makes you perform very well. But you necessarily don't need to be good. For example, we have efficiency. If I'm going to explain the spider a bit, efficiency is like how you are converting your chances. So we looked at Barcelona, for example, up here, that they are scoring 46 goals on 42.91 xG. So they have a positive number in efficiency. And then you're comparing the efficiency numbers per game with the other teams in the league. So Roma, for example, they were fairly close to their expected goals. So they're not a bad offensive team, as you see here in offense, like how they are generating chances. But their efficiency is like plus minus 0. And in Serie A, they are ranked maybe 8 in the efficiency measure. So it's more like telling you that if Roma would be even more efficient, like Inter with Xavinga, for example, they could be even better.
Yeah. So you said that offense is explaining how you are creating chances.
Yeah, so it's really looking at the XG numbers per game and comparing them to other teams. So like how are you creating chances? But it's not only looking at the XG number as in like how high of an XG do you produce. It also looks at like how you, in possession, like how frequently you come to a chance. Because one problem, if you just look at a game, you have Chelsea-Arsenal from the weekend and you look at the expected goals number. I don't remember, but let's say it was 1-1. But then the XG could be like, you could have a possession or a sequence in game when Chelsea attacks, Jelena Sankovic shoots, and then there's a rebound where Rytting Conrad has a second chance and she shoots. Then you have like 2 shots at target with expected goals of like 0.2 plus 0.5 maybe. But you can only score 1 goal per sequence. It's impossible to get 2 points from an attack in football.
It would be very efficient if that would happen. But
so what the offense measure does, it's looking at if Sankovic missed the first chance, then how many times does Rytting Conrad get her chance, and then so it like adds the expected goals together, and that makes it more. When you look at those expected goals numbers from a game, it tells even better how the game has been, I would say.
So, and then efficiency you've already talked about. Then pressing. What is pressing in this spider?
So pressing is a measure of like how much are you allowing your opponent to pass the ball on your offensive 60% of the pitch. So like if how many passes can they make in between a defensive action, a successful defensive action. So if a team has low on pressing, they usually don't care about winning the ball until it's in their own first third or the opponent's final third. So like if you're parking the bus, for example, you have if that's your tactic, your pressing is values are not good.
And this is interesting. I actually spoke to someone the other day that said that they were really impressed with Roma's press play. So, and this is actually telling us something about that.
Yeah, exactly.
So, it's very interesting to see. But also, then we have ball recoveries, and we'll just go through the Spider's metrics here and explain them, so we can just show you guys the rest of the leagues and the teams more easily. But we think it's important that you understand what these metrics means.
Yeah, I agree. Ball recoveries is how you recover the ball in possession, adjusted for when you're not owing the ball. Set pieces is really a difference between like how good you are at creating chances compared to allowing chances on set pieces. So we could have had like set piece offensive, set piece defensively, but here it's like a net value of what you get. Carries, dribbles, how much value you generate according to the expected threat model from carrying, dribbling the ball. Passing, the same, but for passes. And possession is how much you owe the ball. Normal possession. And goalkeeping is the shot stopping XG, so how good your goalkeeper is performing. Okay.
We could see different things here between these two teams. Although since we know that Roma is first placed in the Serie A, it's interesting because then when you look, I want to just tell the one that are listening to this or watches this, obviously, this is kind of interesting because you could really see things when you watch a team play, when you know these things about them in beforehand. So watch out for Roma's pressing game.
Really watch out for it.
Next time you watch them play, then look at the press, their style of press.
And
where they press.
Exactly.
The pitch, obviously.
And in this visualization, like Roma, really, they are top performing in ball recovery, set pieces, pressing, passing, possession, defense. They are the highest ranked team. So like Juventus has the best goalkeeping, but otherwise, like both teams are the two top teams in Italy. Really, they're performing the best. And when you look here, you can see that Inter, that is in fourth position, they are having like a spider where they are the team number 3 in most metrics or in many metrics. But as Fiorentina, they are, you could say, carried by good goalkeeping, and that they are having they're good at set pieces and offensively, but their spider is more telling them that they should finish 5th, 6th in the league, and that Milan should advance to the top 4. But we'll see if that's the case.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we will return to talking about the results of the leagues. But here we have very interesting spiders.
Yeah, we do. Definitely.
I do think so, because I know that you're going to show this later on, but here you could really see the carries, dribbles for Wolfsburg, but also pressing and ball recoveries here. Obviously, they probably, I mean, this is also interesting because they were overperforming their XG, but when we look at efficiency here, it's like, okay.
Yeah, and the efficiency here, since it's only 12 teams in the league, like they are average, more teams that are overperforming their XG right now in the Bundesliga. So like they are doing well, but this measure is like looking at where is the team ranked. If it's ranked number 1, it's furthest out, like on pressing and ball recoveries. And if you're ranked the last, you're in the middle here. So it's you could still really be. Spider is like one way of comparing you to the opponent, but you could still be fairly good, especially when it's a few teams in a league. Like if you would put together all the teams in Europe, like in one presentation, and compare them in between leagues, it would maybe, but that wouldn't be completely fair either.
No, because of the different opponents. But here you could say that the goalkeeping metric, obviously you can't compare it to the Champions League, but they are gonna go into the quarterfinals of the Champions League, and I would probably dare to say that most of the teams left in that tournament is better than the average teams in the German league. So that will be an interesting metric to follow in that tournament as well.
Yeah. And we will see with pressing and ball recoveries and the passing carries, dribbles in some later scatter plots that Wolfsburg is extremely good at generating value when they win the ball. Like they are good at using they want to use the fact that when they win the ball, the opponent is unorganized and there's a lot of empty space. They don't want to slow it down. They just want to attack, and they're
Yeah,
really good
they
at it.
are all about the attack, but also the fact is that they like to have the ball as well.
Yeah, and if you have that tactic, and if you have players like Leon Oberdorf, for example, you can, like, it's not necessarily the best, like they're in their mind, maybe they don't want to have like possession all the time, that's the like idea, to have control, but like we attack, and if we lose the ball quickly, we win it back.
Exactly. And we know how to win it back, like,
yeah,
because
exactly.
they have good players for that. They don't just sit back and let the opponent have the ball, because they want to have the ball in order to be able to score as well.
Yeah. And I mean, Frankfurt to me also is like, they're a good team. It's interesting. We talked about Frankfurt players in last episode, and like, it's interesting to see their development, and they're performing well in all metrics, really.
For sure. There we have Freiburg also with the goalkeeping metric that could be probably a bit better.
Yeah, but they are still performing well, since they are were super efficient in the goal map, if you remember.
Exactly.
So they are like, it's
Very
adding
much.
up. It's adding up. If we go to England, we go to the Derby this week. This is not the game, this the entire league, but it's still interesting. Maybe, I don't know what you thought when you saw it, Mia. Like, since Chelsea is not maybe performing the best in all metrics, they are more like Wolfsburg. They have more like a style of play here. Like
you can. This is what is interesting about Chelsea when you compare them to other teams, especially when from watching this game against Arsenal, because first it looked like they didn't want to have the ball because they wanted to go on counter, but then you see the stats at the end of the game, and it's obvious that Chelsea had the ball. I mean, I think it was 61% in possession compared to 39 for Arsenal. But we must, like, with again from the eye test and just watching the game, you can really tell that Arsenal is a team that could be a little bit more like Wolfsburg in many ways, because they want the ball. They want to play with the ball. Like, they don't sit back and let the opponent have the ball. Chelsea could look like that from time to time, because they tried with the long balls over the top. And then when they have the ball, they want to play fast.
Yeah.
So it's just that's very interesting. But what is interesting here is the goalkeeping metric, obviously, with Chelsea.
And they're still leading.
Exactly. So this is where I think that the great players that Chelsea have.
Yeah.
Like you said with Freiburg here. Okay, so the outfield players, they make sure that the goalkeeping isn't a problem, if you know what I mean. Yeah.
And one thing that I think I mentioned it before, but one thing to remember here with goalkeeping, for example, is that it's still like comparing to the other teams. So if you want to look at, and you can play in different goalkeepers. So if you want to look more into like how good or bad the goalkeeping actually is, you need to go into the player data. Like, because here it's just like, it's telling you that Chelsea's goalkeeping is ranked like in the bottom of the Women's Super League here, but if you look at their numbers, like Chelsea being last maybe still is like better goalkeeping than goalkeeping number 6 in Italy. So you need to like compare the numbers more. This is just comparing you to the other teams in the league.
Obviously. I do remember when we looked at Arsenal's team spider from last season. I think it was the team spider. Yeah, we compared Chelsea and Arsenal last season, and then Arsenal's spider were all over like red. Here you can see that it's goalkeeping, defense, set pieces, carries, dribbles. Obviously, they are overperforming compared to the rest of the league across all metrics, but it was more visible. The red part was bigger.
And as I mentioned in the player episode, like Zinsberger is the best goalkeeper in the world to me. You see here that, it's good. And 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 in defense also, for example, like since it's like what you do as a team together, like the defense is it could mean that like when you look at duels or winning duels, for example, and stopping attacks, other teams could be better, but defense is more looking at like how many chances are you allowing your opponent to generate per sequence. And since if a team is very good at having a high possession, it's hard for the other teams to score. Attack is the best defense, and it's somewhat true because it's a very strong correlation in between like having a high possession and having a low expected goals against per game.
Yeah, for sure.
But we move on to the Manchester teams, and here we can see
this is interesting.
Yeah, this is very, very interesting. We knew the efficiency from looking at the goal map for City, and the goalkeeping is low as well. But you can see that City is a good possession team, as we know, and United has like, if we would have looked at their spider last year, we would have seen a development here.
I'm pretty sure of that fact. But also the fact is that we know that Manchester City, with the likes of Chloe Kelly and Lauren Hemp out on the wings, we have the passing and carries and dribbles.
Yeah.
They are good at that, and they are using those players a lot to play. But here we can see that United in possession, that's really, I do think, this is just a guess now.
Yeah.
But I do think that United have, across the seasons they have played in the WSL, become more comfortable to have the ball, and they can keep the ball better. But they have good. I mean, they have good. This is a good spider.
Yeah, and they have a top-class goalkeeper in Mary Earps as well, keeping them well, and they have players like Una Batier that we talked about before that is contributing in the passing game, but also in the keeping the defensive metrics up here with pressing and ball recoveries when she wins.
It's gonna be interesting to see if the carries and dribbles part in their team spider when the season is over has increased a little bit.
Yeah, or for sure.
Yeah, it could go the other way around as well. But okay, this spider of Lyon, that's an interesting one.
Yeah, they're almost best in all the metrics here on the bottom half. They're second in ball recoveries, and second in possession. But then we already looked at the efficiency, and if you remember from the player episode, we also talked about the goalkeeping and that Lyon didn't have a goalkeeper in the top 10. But as I said then, is that when you play for Lyon, they allow very few chances per game. You can see that the defense is top. And then if you're performing bad on one shot or something, that expected goals can affect the goalkeeping, the save XG percent, much more than if you play in a team that are allowing more shots. So you should take this, as you say in Sweden, with
a pinch of salt. But also this is very interesting because these two teams, they are missing a striker. I mean, they don't have that at the moment. So
you can see that in the efficiency metrics. I mean,
exactly. And the fact is that it's going to be interesting to see when Ada Hegerberg returns to Lyon, and if Amalie Vangsgaard, who recently joined PSG, if she can make a difference for them, and if, I'm not going to say if Ada Hegerberg makes a difference for Lyon, because we already know that, obviously, but she's going to come back from an injury first. So let's see. But the efficiency here is, it's interesting.
Yeah.
And also, I spoke to someone the other day that told me that you have to realize this about French football, that the top teams, they will not go for it for real before it's deadly serious.
Yeah.
and there is something to it, because I do think that most people thought that Barcelona would be able to beat Lyon in the Champions League final last season.
Yeah.
But then it was like, okay, now it's the Champions League final, and Lyon is Lyon, and in finals it's deadly serious. Just leave it at that. But it is for them.
Yeah,
so.
For sure. Yeah, we can mention Montpellier. I talked about them being. It's pretty tight between 3 to 5, but Montpellier is like they're doing good. If you look at the style of play, like they're performing well in all metrics, it usually leads to good performance. As Fleury is, yeah, they have a good offense and defense. They have a good netto on like the chances they create, and which is important. And if we, yeah, we will see. I think it will be a fight between Fleury and Paris of the fourth place. And yeah, if you look at Barcelona, we should take these. I still made the spiders, but they're not completely fair since all data is not in. So we don't need to like it still tells like how good they are, and they are the two best teams. But I think that's what's messing up the efficiency metric here, since.
But also the fact is that Barcelona is creating chances and chances and chances, and you can't convert on all of the chances.
Exactly.
I mean, that would be like the probability would be that it would be just weird. So, and often I can hear actually Barcelona fans saying that, I mean, it was a couple of seasons ago that they created so much, but the fans didn't think they scored enough. So it's often you can hear this about Barcelona, that they create the chances, but they aren't efficient enough.
No,
so
and
it's still interesting, because this is like their probably how many fans and others are viewing them when you look at the Spider as well. But we know that they are a great team. It's not that. So,
and efficiency and goalkeeping, that's really like metrics that play, I would say, almost a bigger part in like in tournaments with less games. So like when it comes to Champions League, for example, like having the players that can make the extra and being like very efficient in the few games that counts, since it's like it's not a big league where every team plays every team 2 times. Like it's a knockout stage, and you have to perform in the few times you play. And maybe it's like easier to perform when you go back to home pitch, and then it's one game where you really just need to make the job done. So like goalkeeping and efficiency is something that can really carry you in a tournament like that.
Now we come to the interesting things here. Because
Yes.
now you have compared all teams, no matter what league they are playing in.
Yeah, so now I've looked at all teams in the top 5 women's leagues, except from Spain, where I looked at the teams where we have like enough data, so we have like more than 50% of their games, so it's like fair to put them in. So I don't have all the teams in Spain, but I have all the teams in the other leagues.
But is it, looking at these plots now, is it always true that if you end up in the top right-hand corner, that's good?
It's not necessarily. Like in this measure, for example, it's in some graphs it is, but in some of them it's more maybe style of play that I want to show. So I will mention it when we come there. But
that's great.
I've chosen, yeah, but I've chosen here to mark out 11 different teams, and the black dots are just top 5 teams in the league. Some of them I still know which they are when we talked about graphs, but I wanted to like that we have a legend where you can like look at which color is which team. So I chose 11 teams, and it's top teams in every league. So it's like Wolfsburg and Bayern München from Frauen Bundesliga. It's Manchester United, Arsenal, and Chelsea from the Women's Super League. Lyon and PSG from France, and it's Roma and Juventus from Serie A, and Real Madrid and Barcelona from Spain. So I'm sorry, Manchester City fans, you're in this plot, but you're not marked out. But I know where you are in some of them, and for Inter and Milan and other teams as well. I'm sorry. But here, for example, it's just like how many goals are you producing and expected goals. And like in the Spiders, we were comparing the teams in the other leagues. Here we can see more the raw numbers, like where are the teams, and we can see then that Barcelona is the team that is both generating the most expected goals per game, almost 4, which is insane, and then how many goals they are scoring per game. So you can see that they're roughly scoring the same as their expected goals. And you can see then that like Wolfsburg, for example, they're the second teams in expected goals, but if we look at goals per 90, Lyon is ahead.
Yeah.
So it will be more of this, and please ask questions if you see something interesting. Otherwise, I will explain the X value and the Y value, and we can maybe stop and discuss a bit. So this one is, I looked at like how many passes per 90 is the team doing. So generally, like if you have a higher passes per 90, that means also that you have a higher possession. And expected threat passes 90, that really means like what value are you generating from when you're passing the ball. So really like how much are you making the possession sequence more dangerous to your opponent, like making it the odds higher for your team to score a goal later in the possession chain. So if a team has a lot of passes per 90, but a lower expected threat, which is quite normal sometimes that you have teams that have a very high possession, but their expected threat per 90 is lower than maybe other teams that are having a lower possession. And that usually can be explained that if you have a high possession, you're usually attacking against the organized defense. Because if you're having the philosophy to like keep the ball in control, get everyone together and attack and wait for the right opportunity, it could be harder to attack since the defense of the opponent has time to like be organized and cover all spaces. And then if you're a team playing in that control possession style, you maybe need the extra players that can make your opponent and create chances from I wouldn't say nothing, but from more packed areas. And there you can see a difference that Barcelona, they have a lot of pass per 90, they have a high possession, but they're also very good at generating chances. While I'm not saying that PSG and Bayern Munich are bad at it. You can see compared to the other teams, they're still good, but you can see that their efficiency from creating chances in a high possession is not anywhere close to Barcelona.
This is quite interesting because if one were to watch this episode back, first with the XG and shot maps, and then you look at the team Spiders, and then we go into this, you can see a pattern here as well, because obviously Barcelona is doing well here. But also Wolfsburg, because from watching their Spider, I mean, it's not a surprise to find them up there as well with the XG passes. So
exactly, and here we can see that Wolfsburg and Wolfsburg and Lyon especially, they are like having a low possession but are very efficient in creating value. You can also see Roma in quite the same area. And I would say that from Wolfsburg and Roma, it comes from like they are very good, efficient in winning the ball back and winning it high up in the pitch, so they can attack against an unorganized defense. Probably there is a lot of empty space in between defenders, and then they can easily come into these important areas around the penalty area and in the penalty area where you have to come to have a higher chance of scoring.
Yeah.
You can maybe take from this graph as well that Real Madrid is not performing bad, but you can see that they are dropping compared to other top teams in Europe. Like they're not really in the same. You want to be up here somewhere, depending on your style of play.
This is where we go for the top right-hand corner in this graph, at least. Yeah.
So here is more of a style of play graph instead. So here I'm not saying that anything is good or bad, but here you see like how many passes per 90 are you having, like how high is your possession. You can see again that PSG and Bayern Munich and Barcelona is in the top. And then you have average pass distance. So that's like how in meters, how long is your average pass. And then you can see that like Barcelona and Bayern Munich, not maybe that surprisingly, are like playing more shorter passes.
But this is like very interesting now, because what we talked about before about Chelsea and the long balls.
Yeah.
I mean, is it fair to say that from like watching this plot? Because here we can see that they like to play a long pass.
Yeah, but of the top teams in Europe, they are the team that like the most likes to knock it long. If I'm not saying that's their style of play is to only knock it long, but they
I
like
mean,
that.
we could say that they are good at it, so they do it. I mean, it's just like that. But it is interesting.
Yeah.
Let's just say that. I think we can share some of these graphs with the episode on Twitter later on.
For sure.
Yeah.
And you can see also with Roma and Wolfsburg, we talked about like winning the ball high and counter-attacking and using the unorganized defense. You can see that they also have a higher pass distance, and that comes from like really like when you're a possession team, you make more of the shorter passes in between throw the ball, also as a defensive tactic. But when you don't have that style of play, you don't make the short passes as much, and then your average pass distance is higher. Really. Okay, so here we have expected threat again. We talked about expected threat passing, and we saw that Wolfsburg is good. But here I compare to carries. So you don't necessarily need to be like good in both metrics. You can create, this is also a bit of style of play, like how do you generate your chances? Do you generate them mostly by passing and crossing maybe? Or do you generate a lot of chances by players making a difference with carrying the ball, running through open space, or dribbling in important, making important actions through dribbling. And here you can see that Wolfsburg is really top in both metrics. So they are good at both. While you can see as Barcelona, we talked about, they're more of a passing team.
Yeah, passing team.
It's quite interesting. And we can maybe say that except from Wolfsburg being really good at carrying ball, Juventus and Bayern Munich are the teams that stands out with just carries the most. But you could see a different style of play when we talked about Roma and Wolfsburg. Roma and Wolfsburg talk here, but when they win the ball high, you can see that Roma is like more generating the attack value in attack with passing, while as Wolfsburg use both. And it could also be
unpredictable.
And it could also be like, this could be come out as a form of tactic, like how the team wants to attack, but it could also really be what tools the coach has. Like maybe that's linked to tactics, but for example, that you have players in Wolfsburg or that are truly good at carrying and are like quick with running the ball and hard to defend against when they dribble. So it could be like, what tools do you have in the team? What kind of players do you have? So here we have a defensive metric, also like a style of play. And here you have PPDA beyond 30, and that's pressure per defensive actions. Beyond 40 means that it's on the 60% offensive part of the pitch. So like beyond the 40%. So if the pitch is 100 meters long, it's 40 and more, seen from the defending team. And so that really means like how many passes can your opponent make on that part of the area of the pitch before you get in between with some kind of defensive action. It could be an interception, it could be a challenge or attack.
So here you can see that Bayern München is they are more towards that than the than the rest of the colored dots.
Maybe so. Like usually, like if you have if you're generating more defensive actions on the offensive part of the pitch, you're more likely to also win the ball high. But since PPDA really measures not only the successful actions, like more when you come close to your opponent, really, that's why it's called pressure.
Okay. Yeah.
There, in that way, you can see that, for example, Barcelona here has. If you see a trend line, you can see that Barcelona's efficiency in actually winning the ball from pressing high is lower than if you compare to PSG here, for example.
Yeah.
And you can see that Lyon maybe being the best team in this metric, and Roma and Wolfsburg that we talked about also very successful. So if you have a low number, PPDA beyond 40, a low number is good. Then necessarily, like, you don't need to. This is a style of play. Like, so for Barcelona, for example, that is a possession team. They don't maybe use high press in the sense that Lyon does it. So you don't necessarily need to be up here. You can see that all the good teams are in this corner here, but it's more of a style of play than telling like which team is the best defensive team.
Exactly.
Okay, so here I have some shorts that can be hard to understand. But here we have on X here, we have FTE 90, that stands for final third entries per 90. So how many times are you entering the final third per game, either by carrying the ball or dribbling, passing the ball. So in possession. And entries in EIB 90 is entries into the box. So that's entries into the penalty area. And you can see a strong trend here that, of course, if you're entering the final third more, you're more likely to enter your opponent's penalty area or the box. And that makes sense, right?
Yes.
But if you're further, like, if you see this cluster of teams, so if you're further up in this direction, that you're somewhere around here with, for example, Arsenal and Chelsea, that tells you how efficient you are in, like, when you're reaching the final third, how efficient are you in then reaching the box, because most goals are scored from the box. Most teams want also to shoot inside the box, like they're trying to find space to enter the box and then take a finish. So you can see here that we don't necessarily, you can say that, yeah, well, PSG is the best team in reaching the final third with Barcelona, but you can also say that from efficiency wise, you can see that maybe Chelsea is the most efficient team in, like, converting a final third entry into an entry into the box.
Yeah, they don't need many chances, like with the long balls.
Exactly.
I'm joking now. I'm joking now, but yeah, I had to say that.
But so it tells you something about efficiency, and but then, like, if you have the highest efficiency, like you have a very high efficiency on team here, efficiency is not what matters really. It's like successful entries is what matters. So, like, if you have a higher efficiency, you don't maybe need to enter the final third as much. But if you're having a lower efficiency and entering the final third more times, you're still maybe performing better. So you can see PSG, their efficiency is not that good, maybe from their style of possession, that they like go into the final third and they go back into the central, and then they go back into the final third again. So they're like moving in between. But you can see that they still have more entries into the box than a lot of teams here that has a higher efficiency.
And if you listen really closely to what Jesper is saying, and you can hear that his cat is approving to what he's saying.
I hope the cat is not co-hosting this podcast too much, but
no.
he would. I have put him in another room so he won't be like in camera, because he would probably be here in front of me.
Yeah, it's funny because when you talk, he's like meow meow, and you can hear him say, "Yeah, that's correct. That's correct."
I usually say that he's a Hull Tigers fan, so he's not that happy at the moment.
No.
Okay, so here we have expected goals compared to entry into the box. So if you have entered the box, most shots are taken from inside the box. How high is your expected goals per 90 from when you're entering into the box? So you can see this as an efficiency as well. We know from before that Barcelona is the best team in producing chances seen from expected goals. But if you see a trend line here as well, you can see that Manchester United, for example, they're very efficient in making their entry into the box into a valuable finish. And if we looked at the shot maps, they had a lot of finishes very close to the goal. While as Roma, for example, seemed to have more finishes taken from further away from the goal inside the penalty area, which keeps their expected goals number lower. It could also be, you have to look closer to the data to make sure assumptions, but it could also be like how you're entering. For example, expected goals from a header, from a cross in a packed area is lower than if a player is running alone towards the goalkeeper, for example. So if your tactic is entering through crosses, that could keep your efficiency down here. Yes. So here we have set pieces as well. And here is set pieces expected goals per 90 is the Y value. So it tells you really how many chances per 90 are you producing from set pieces. And set piece here is like free kicks, throw-ins, corners, not penalties. And set pieces XGA is really how much expected goals against do you have. So how many chances are you allowing on set pieces against you from the opponent. And we have like the teams are in like one half of the pitch, and then we have this team here that is not doing well on defending on set pieces.
Yeah, but I'm thinking that, if you have a team like Barcelona that keeps the ball for the most of the game, you don't let your opponents have the ball. That's the first thing. And if they don't have the ball, they can't create any set pieces.
Yeah, and like one thing to say here is that like you don't want to be up in the right corner here. So you really want to be up here in the left corner. Now they're not exactly mirror these graphs, so you can see that the Bayern Munich, for example, they are allowing a lot of chances from their defensive set pieces. But if you look at their net, though, it's still like plus 0.3. But since you don't have that many set pieces during a season, there's a lot of coincidence here as well. This is like when we looked at expected goals, but there's not that many goals scored every season from set pieces. So the goal difference could be something different. But if you're coaching a team and you're playing several tournaments and you want to establish some kind of set piece tactics and you're coaching for several seasons, you really want your team to be up here in the left corner, because then over time you will produce well and you will have a good netto outcome on set pieces. And there you have, for example, then Lyon maybe that are the most in the best area really. That are producing twice as good chances for them than they are having against them. Arsenal, we talked about their set piece efficiency in the Spider. You also have Roma there. Whereas you have PSG and Juventus and Bayern Munich in somewhere like in between, like a netto area.
Yeah, and Wolfsburg.
Yeah, Wolfsburg are like negative, so they need to improve.
If Thomas Stroth is seeing this, then you know what to do.
Yeah,
that's their head coach.
Okay. Okay, we move on. So this is also a style of play. So here I have possession actions. So like here you have the percent of actions in outer corridors. So if you're playing wide, you can see, and then you have a percent of actions in central corridor.
Yeah.
And here you also see a trend, which is not like that surprisingly that they in somewhat correlate, because you have, I don't have the inner corridors here, which is like the other corridor, but otherwise really like if you have a high value of actions in the central corridor, your value in your percentage in the outer corridors has to be lower, because the central, the inner, and the outer, they make 100%.
Yeah, obviously, but this is also interesting because here you can see the style of play that with Manchester United and Chelsea that are playing in the English league, they tend to play wide.
Yeah, and they are like of the top teams here in Europe. They are the teams that play more wide. Otherwise, you can see more of the teams being here in the middle, or even more maybe towards the central. But United, we talked about Una Batier. Her heat map was also like this season. It was like playing in the outer corridor, and she's doing that well. So that's very interesting. And
but also the fact is that when you see, we say this that now we talk about leagues because obviously then you have the teams that tend to play wide. There are two from the WSL. Yeah. Then when you go the other direction here, it's Bayern Munich and Wolfsburg with the action more centrally.
And Bayern Munich, they really stand out. Like they are, because usually I would say that most coaches they would like to own the ball. At least we could have looked in the final third only, but they like to own the ball in the center of the pitch because at least in the top half or in the center third, because you have a better angle at shooting, for example. And also like if you have that zone 14 that we talked about in the Pernilla Harder article before last summer, is a space where like usually only the top teams in the world can like own that area just outside the penalty area centrally, and from that area it's easier to like find diagonal passes into the penalty area instead of like if you're from the side of the pitch you just have like one angle really you can pass at, so it makes it even harder for the defense to defend. But it's hard to get.
This is like a piece of puzzle. Now this episode I can feel that what we have done here. I'm gonna stick to Chelsea, but we said that the passes, like the long passes, and then you have the wide play. So they tend to play long passes and they like to play wide.
Yeah, exactly. And we have it is the last slide, and remember me that I'm gonna say something after this slide related to that.
I'm gonna remind you, I promise.
But this is also a style of play. So this really says, like in the bottom here, we have ball wins per 90 adjusted to possession. So this is interesting. Like if we wouldn't have adjusted to the possession, we wouldn't have the top teams having the highest numbers. So like 145 ball wins for PSG is not the actual amount of ball wins per game, but it's adjusted for their high possession. So here you can see that the good teams are like more efficient in winning the ball than the teams that have to chase the ball all the time. Because if you would look at not adjusted ball wins per season, PSG wouldn't be the top team. There would be other French teams that are hunting the ball more that has a higher value. But that means the importance of adjusting defensive values. And then recovery mean X, that's an interesting metric, I think. So that really tells you like how high up in the pitch in meters are you winning the ball on average. And to say here, like 55 is in meters. And when I work with data on pitches, like all the football pitches in the world are not the same size. Unfortunately, they are different. But when we take the tagged data, we have like a visual data pitch that is always 105 meters times 68. So we adjust all the pitches to fit into that computer pitch. So like half the pitch of 105 would be 52.5. So you can see here that Olympique Lyon is the only team, or one of, I wish I remember which this team was, but one of two teams that on average wins the ball on offensive half. The other teams are winning defensively. And that's because most wins you make is that when your opponent team is reaching your final third and there are less attackers than defenders, is more packed, they try to make that they are making the cross, or they're making that pass that if it goes through it will be a chance, but it's harder to make, and then you win the ball lower. That's like usually how you win the ball. But that we talked about Lyon, Roma, and Wolfsburg, like winning the ball high and attacking on counter-attacking. You can see here that Lyon is.
Yeah, they are outstanding in that area. But also the fact is that now when you can't compare this to one game, but you can see patterns if you know this. So what I thought about Arsenal when I watched the derby this weekend against Chelsea is that you could see that they won a lot of the balls and second balls in the central part of the pitch.
Yeah.
So,
and they have a high recovery, like they're winning the ball high up on average. But I would say that their efficiency, that's something that they could work with. If you look at like how many balls they win when they're hunting the ball, like they have a high possession, but if you compare their numbers to Barcelona and PSG, it's not close.
Exactly.
So yeah, this was the slides. I love to make them, and what I wanted to add is that like this is very interesting to go through, but it's also like a product that we have Playmaker have that usually like after the season to our clients when we work with teams, we could do these kind of graphs with spider shot maps and deliver like a after season report. And if we have a team, for example, like Lyon, it could be that we have these graphs, but then we maybe merge together Lyon's current season or the finished season with the season before, and then you can mark out Lyon for several seasons, and you can look at improvement, like where have we become better. And when you, as a coach, or if it would have been a player report with player data, then you can more relate to like that the coach, like I'm trying to implement this tactic, has it worked? Or like the things I try to implement, does it work in the way I expect it to? And have when I change this style of play, have we become better than our opponents compared to last year, for example? So that's another service that we offer.
Yes, and I'm sure you and I could like visualize it in both with graphs and plots, but also writing an article about one of the teams when the season is over.
Yeah, for sure.
To show how you can use those reports. Well, time flies, as one would say. So, but very interesting as usual. And we will be back in 2 weeks. I think we said February 2nd. We're going to talk about the transfer window. And then we are going to have a guest. And that's our good friend Abdullah. He's going to join us to talk about transfers that have been made during the transfer window. And then we're going to look at data on these players. Not everyone that has been transferred to another team, because we won't have time. But then Jesper is going to show you the data. And maybe we could have this episode in mind when we talk about that. Are players in the right team of the style of play and what they can provide, like we talked about in the beginning.
And when we looked at, for example, PSG's problem with efficiency, and if Vangsgaard would come up, like have they recruited her to make that metric improve? So
exactly. And I think we are gonna see Manchester United presenting a couple of players as well. That will also be interesting from what we have talked about. Maybe Lyon as well. We don't know that yet, but it's going to be a very interesting episode. We love to talk about transfers, team styles of play, and the data from single players, and then just put them together. Talk with Abdullah, who is a very good women's football analyst, together with your knowledge and data and everything. So 2 weeks time, remember that. Have a good night. And thank you, Jesper.
Thank you, Mia. Have a good night. And don't forget to subscribe.
Oh, yeah, that's important. Subscribe to the channel.
Yeah.